This is incredible. Arcane released exclusively on Netflix at the end of 2021, and since then I heard good things about the show from time to time online. But that didn't have me rushing to the show. Personally, I'm someone who struggles to watch shows. You got to invest so much time into shows, and I don't have a lot of time as it is. So really I lose interest if the show hasn't hooked me within the first episode and move on. Or I'll watch the show over a long period if I'm interested enough. Maybe 2 episodes a week until I finish it. I'm like that because if I'm not hooked, I'd rather spend the spare time I have on what I enjoy most entertainment wise. But if a show really hooks me, I'll binge the hell out of it until I finish it. Arcane did that to me. And man, does it feel good to have a show do that to me. I can't remember the last time I was so hooked with a show. I enjoyed the show so much that I started going through it again as I've been putting this video together. From what I said before about me not watching shows much, that should explain how good this show is. It is based off an online game called League of Legends, which is something I don't know much about. I knew it existed and was an online fantasy game, but that's it. Though after watching this show, I now have the want to experience the game and learn more about the characters I love in the show. I went in completely blind with the show and I'm glad I did. Because so many elements in the show you will know if you have a lot of experience with the game. In terms of lore with the world and how characters might play out. Now talking about the show, I will be semi-spoiling it. I won't be spoiling big story beats, because if you haven't seen the show, I really want you to experience the show for yourself. But to get into my love for the show, I'll semi-spoil, allowing me to get into the characters and their overall relationships, as well as the settings. So if you want to go in completely blind, I say go watch the show right now. It's an incredible show, definitely worth your time. Alright, let's get into the characters and the overall world they live in. Within the show, we are centered around 2 different ways of living. 2 cities connected from top to bottom. The rich urban city of Pentover, a city full of bright colours and world-leading science, especially with technology. But the people within it seem very entitled and unaware of what help is needed below. Though there is people looking to improve overall life. Which leads to what I became more interested in to see. The shady, oppressed underground of Zion. A dark, moody place full of criminals and death. Especially later on in the show when the underground is shaped by events. This city is so filled with culture. For how dark and moody the city is, it's actually more warm with people coming together more often than in Pentover. People in Pentover can mainly be self-focused. The show does a great job to show how apart the cities are, mainly showing how looked down on Zion is from Pentover. You can literally get down to Zion from a Pentover trash chute. The air of Zion is so toxic, outsiders have to wear masks to avoid their bodies shutting down. It all works well to explain how oppressed Zion is, leading to rebellion. A chemical was created called Shimmer, which the Undercity uses for gain. It enhances whoever consumes it. In Pentover, the creation of Heztech, a way for any person to control magical energy, collaboration of magic and technology, both threaten the balance of the cities. We see Pentover expand from Heztech, where the people of Zion are left to stay behind, which of course leads to a lot of people from there rebelling to take power for themselves. That's the baseline story and environments the show is based around. There's many twists and turns throughout, most having me in shock. I think the overall story is really good. Seeing the 2 cities go back and forth, both cities and people are so different in style too, love it. And we get to see things expand and change through the cities as the show goes on. The overall world building is really great, and I found myself always being intrigued by the environments of either city. In terms of the look of the show, this has to be some of the best animation work I've ever seen. This show is incredibly beautiful. So much creativity in the show with how shots are positioned. They really took the time to craft scenes. The fight scenes are great, always very appealing with great cinematography. Like seeing these 2 characters battle, for example, Echo and Jinx. They've known each other since they were kids, but they've been put in a position to battle. The way the scene is done with having flashes to them as kids and then back to present, overall showcasing a game that they used to play as kids, but now it's serious. It's amazing. The cinematography, we're seeing Jinx behind a watch, getting these comic book style prints in the background. It's all candy for the eyes. What I love most about the show, and what I mainly want to talk about, are the characters. Now, I've learnt after watching the show with reading up on some of the game lore, characters in Arcane that are in the game have a lot of different details with them. The show isn't confirmed canon to the game, but it might not be because of a lot of changes with details in characters and timeline lore. But that's not a bad thing coming from a heavy Resident Evil fan that gets a lot of non-canon products. I do find it interesting, for example, that Jinx and Vi ain't even confirmed sisters within the game canon. That's very surprising for myself since I just watched the show first off. And those two have a heavy spotlight within the show, as well as the meaning of sisters. Now, pretty much every character in the show is interesting in some sort of way, and have their own personal arcs. Jace and Victor, the creators of Heztech, are great characters and work off each other really well. Jace goes through a lot of changes throughout the show. We see many different levels to him, and he gets used a lot throughout too, but he can also surprise people with the way he switches up. Victor grew on me as the show went on. The bloke can barely move and keeps to himself, shut off from people. He goes for something better, but that leads him down some dark paths. Vander is a very cool character. He keeps the Undercity together. He just wants what's best for his people and will do anything for them. He also becomes a father figure to main characters Vi and Powder, teaching them to use their heads. You can really tell that he's gained the respect of the people and is very humble. Silco is the main villain of the show. He is a great villain. I understood his motives, and he had some truly villainous traits, like supporting a damaged girl to do horrible things. He takes advantage of people for his own gain. He's very smart though in the way he moves. I think the design with half his face damaged is a great touch. Scenes where he was coming out of darkness and you could only see his red eye made him intimidating. Now, the two main characters that I really got invested in was Vi and Powder. We see the sisters in the wake of a war, finding their parents dead. Sets the tone for the show. Vander takes them in. Pushing forward, we find them with new life in the Undercity. Vi just wants what's best for Powder, which leads them to steal, setting off a butterfly effect of events. Vi as a kid is pretty tough. You see her taking on anything in her way. She is very motivated and filled with rage. But she has a good heart and looks out for her friends and family. She's a very selfless character, always thinking about others first. Always taking on the responsibility of others. As an adult, she is more driven and powerful, later getting these pretty cool gauntlets. I love how badass she is throughout. From staring down a kid with a knife when she was young, to fully not backing down in a bar fight as an adult. She is completely fearless. She forms a relationship with a character called Caitlin. I think they work off each other really well. They seem to gain a somewhat romantic connection over time as well, which feels warranted after all the time and experiences we see with them. The other sister, Powder, is trying to fit in. She gets looked down on from other characters early on. Her made traps don't work a lot of the time, and she seems to have a lot of bad luck when trying to help. You feel really bad for her, but want her to win. There's a scene where Vi wants Powder to stay back while the gang goes out on a mission, because she thinks Powder will get in the way. You just see Powder lose it later on, crying uncontrollably, because she feels so useless. She has a lot of built-up trauma early on as a child. Powder, later to be named Jinx, a nickname formed from insults, is my favourite character of the show. When she is older, naming herself Jinx, she becomes so wild. Events in the show changed her. The trauma she forms young has gotten even bigger and more out of control. She becomes feared from the public because she is so dangerous and unpredictable. It's crazy to see her as an innocent child to becoming a wildcard, very similar to Harley Quinn. I love the aspects of her seeing visions and hearing voices. She becomes so unhinged. It's like she has different personalities sometimes. All the times her traps failed as a kid, now she can make advanced explosives that even a high level scientist like Victor is surprised by. As well as her arsenal is nuts. Equipped with a Gatling gun which works well off her explosive personality, she is such an interesting character to watch. I just love how unpredictable she is and how explosive she is. It's like she is having the time of her life, but filled with pain underneath. The path from Powder to Jinx is amazing to watch, and that is my favourite part of the show, seeing her overall journey. This show is pretty incredible. It's been announced the second season is in the works, which I really look forward to watching. If you haven't seen the show, definitely give it a go. I've gotten a lot of joy out of this show. The art style, characters and world building are all done amazingly. The overall writing for the show is really good. You are not handheld. You are treated like an adult when watching the show. The show deals with some really serious stuff, and none of it is treated with disrespect. The show earns all the things it pulls off. And you really feel like the characters in the show are real because of how great the writing is. As well as the voice acting is really good too. It's an amazing show and I'm very excited to dive back into the world of Arcane with Season 2. But until then, thank you very much for watching.